Welcome, everyone. Peace and love from the Atlantean consciousness. This is Grandmaster Dr. Thor Templar, and I'm going to cover today a very important area for every practicing occult scientist. And as our research gets more and more formalized, and of course, that is our goal as the Intergalactic Guild of Occult Sciences, is to get this down to a measurable, producible energy to affect your personal life as strongly and as powerfully as possible. And no one trusts anything. They want to sell products, and that's it. And that is getting us nowhere. It's the reason why we have so much junk on the market and everything else now, is because of the fact it's just basically the commodities. There are some, I guess, relatively well-meaning people that want to live in a delusional state that something has energy, something does this, something does that. And, ultimately, if it works in your life, that's all that matters. But as we track people, that really generally doesn't tend to be the case. So, our latest research, which is very important here, is actually how to perform rituals, the best way to perform rituals. And this in itself is confusing, and our older policies we are now changing in terms of, there was the old world philosophy is do lots of rituals, or at least be very consistent and even daily, and push the energy out there. Now, and a lot of practitioners, particularly a lot of voodoo and brujos and so forth, are having candles go 24/7, generating energies. And this is, it's not invalid use, but it's a lot of it is overkill. It's like taking supplements. Your body can only take in so much energy, and just so much magical energy can be transferred to someone that they take in and use at one particular time. And like anything, it's not like you're dealing with you're programming in an endless amounts of programs into people and they just take it and use it like a computer. And to a large extent, even computers can't take endless programs. It depends on so many factors. It's like your memory. If you don't have enough memory in your computer, you can't put in new programs and so forth. So the old adage of, constantly pounding at this because this gets greater effects, we found is not the best way of doing things. And to a large extent, it's like taking supplements that aren't absorbed by the body. It's not what you take, it's what you absorb. And basically the body can only absorb 300 milligrams of vitamin C in that particular day, or I'm not sure the exact period of hours, but it may be even daily. So if you take, as is very typical and I've done myself, you take 1,000 milligrams, you're just going to pee out that 700 milligrams you've paid for, and it's totally wasted. Now, there are things that tend to absorb or stay in the body longer. They have time-release vitamin C, which is what I take now to get higher doses, and we just don't know. But we do know that that's what the bad is. So the point is that, does that matter? So if we can equate that to doing a ritual, so if you do 2 rituals and that has maxed out your target, doing 6 rituals is a waste of time. The whole idea is to do things at the highest level of empowerment and power for the shortest period of times to get the greatest amount of results. That's what life is all about. Everything in life is like that. You want to invest $10 in something and you want to make 10,000. So, but it's not only just being busy in life, it's being efficient and doing things right. And when you do that, you are actually in a particular functioning pattern where you are just getting much better results because you're doing things right. You're doing things very efficient. You're doing things very powerfully, instead of doing things of the kind of giant dumping waterfall effect on something. You just put so much energy there that you just... Now, that doesn't bear out in terms of understanding what gets results. So, and ever since we started Next Level Occultism, what we've done is modified our teaching. We've been saying this for years while we're still trying to get all our old classic texts out, because they are fascinating, interesting texts, but and can be used by the intermediate to advanced magician better in terms of the more grimoire text. But all that stuff is kind of old style, and it's very interesting information, and when used and adapted in our new sigil program, can add to. And we're always looking, what adds, what triggers within you, and everybody has certain things that they gravitate to somehow like. Some people love doing mental magic. Other people like doing more ritual stuff. Some people like burning lots of candles and having an altar. They like the old traditions. And, you need to adapt that to your life. If it's something you like and enjoy doing, you get better results from. I'll never forget a person who said to me, well, I'll do whatever it takes. I spent years doing yoga and I hated it and so forth. Well, he didn't get any results from that. So the whole idea is that if you do not like what you're doing, there's going to be a mental block. And the secrets to getting magic to empower and work in your life at stronger and better levels has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of work you're doing. Now, repetition of something tends to make you better. People could call that practice. But, if you practice a sport, you just can't show up in, without the right shoes, without the uniform, and just kind of walk around. If you're playing basketball, I'm just going to walk up and down the court and, occasionally throw a ball, and I got my street shoes on, I got a suit on. And a lot of non-physical practice tends to take that nature, meaning you're doing things in a very casual, sloppy manner. And, I'm doing it. Well, and that's the problem that happens when you do things too much and too often. The whole idea is to make your processes and do them with great passion and excitement for very short periods of time and in burst-type patterns. And that means intermittently, which also tends to get much better results with the whatever your target is. Most people's targets are themselves. So it is important that everyone understand that way of working. And what Next Level Occultism is all about, is I keep saying, and is the way things need to work, is that you get these very short, written and succinct text. While things tend to grow in page numbers because we're repeating information and putting in kind of what they call boilerplate information, what sigils are, what are this and that. The core of those texts, and the way we will be restructuring a lot of books, is the core of the text is going to be something that is a minimum of pages, as little as we possibly can, but still get the point across. But, that isn't enough. But, when you're doing instructions, you don't need a handbook of instructions. You don't need 200 pages of how to do something. And almost I don't know any book that really has 200 pages of how-to. Generally, it's a 200-page book, and you've got 8 or 10 pages of how-to. The rest of it is a bunch of filler information which you may not understand, value, or even bother to read. And I'm getting to the point where I'm having problems reading a lot of people's books because the babbling incoherency of their texts are so boring. And I don't think it's an effective way to communicate anymore. It's old world stupidity, not old world ancient good like a lot of people think that mystery schools were. But it's old world 19th century traditional training, which I think was valueless to begin with. And of course, a certain percentage of clone type people, those mutton-headed freaks that can remember things and follow instructions, are able to pass those things, while the majority of people either struggle or are not interested. And that's the nature of the world. So I don't ever think it was really valid to begin with. And of course, the longer the book is, the better it is. We all know that. Well, how many pages is the book? Well, it's 10,000 pages, and it's all the same word. So, but it's 10,000 pages, so it's got to be good, right? So, real teaching, no matter what it is, should be a short number of pages giving you the basic details of doing something, and you have to develop, particularly as an occultist, how to implement that in your life to make it work for you. And you can't teach that in a book, and of course that's when you do something or that people claim they get that. You don't get that from teachers, you get that from your own personal guidance. Sitting, the amusing thing is people think sitting in front of a teacher and then talking to you in a lecture that they mumble out is somehow, well, that's what I want my personal teaching. Well, that's another very stupid way in a class of literally from 30 to hundreds teaches you absolutely nothing. Nobody really pays attention to that. Hearing somebody's voice, wouldn't it be better if that was on a cassette tape or cassette tapes, what am I dating myself? Wouldn't that be better if that was on some digital recorder so you could listen to it over and over again? Or maybe when you were as tired, hungover, or pissed off at your mate? And is it any different than what's in the book, which you technically could read, or if you have a Kindle Fire, reads it to you? Is there something great difference? Because teachers don't teach you, they regurgitate information while they're thinking of whatever it is that teachers do with their momentous amount of free time. So, it's important to understand that, following these procedures are important. So the whole idea is to have succinct, and, there are very simplistic books out there that have very small pages. And, if something is well written, then it has value. If it's deliberately designed to be read quickly and not use tools or have other skills, meaning very typical of what the Finbar books has, you generally don't have enough information. While the information is fascinating in some of these texts, there's not enough information and it's not written very well to do much with it. There just isn't anything there. It's just all XXX when it takes a whole bunch more than that to get any kind of system to work. So I've never known anybody that's getting any kind of results using any Finbar text, and we've sold them to people for probably 20 years and never really got any feedback from, except, of course, like most things, there's always a few people that seem to get results, but nobody really got it. They love the books because they can go through them in 20 minutes. I'm done. Now I can be a famous magician with lots of power. So the whole idea is that, so it's that. And you do need to understand and get a long lecture, and that's the whole idea of part 2 of the next level training, is to get a good lecture. And this you can listen to over and over again when you feel like it, or not listen to it, but it gives you in-depth understanding of the subject matter. A nice long lecture. Which gives you in-depth understanding, the bigger picture, which then you apply to the smaller picture, the written information. And then, of course, you need an actual tool to empower your process while you're learning everything, and so that you get results pretty quickly to break through your blockages. And then these tools serve as further empowerments that constantly give you a step up in your manifesting process. So, that's what works. That's what we've done for years. And it's not really all that groundbreaking. And mystery schools have basically done that for years. To have endless texts that some people think are so-called powerful, to have all these books of what? So, you got to know how to apply them, and ultimately you got to apply them, while people tend to take so many occult texts as armchair literature. So that process is well underway, and we're refining this as we go through each and every one of these, and eventually we'll offer video training and other things online, and there will be actual CDs that people can get that are empowered, that you listen to as well, and you'll have this whole kind of set for everything. And of course, all of this takes a lot of work and time, and we are moving ahead in all these areas as fast as we can, but everything takes months and years to do. But cutting through all this, what works and what doesn't based when you're a real teaching and research organization. And the whole idea is to get plain and simple kick-ass results from anything that you use. And of course, this is the constant seeking of this ultimate source, often called the Grail, not the Holy Grail, which is connected to Christianity, but the concept of the Grail, the harvest cup, the cup of fertility. Basically something that helps you manifest what you desire in life, which is this energy, which was later taken by Christianity to mean this Grail, diluted, mystical consciousness state. But that whole Grail was in existence way before Christianity and was part of ancient paganism and part of the concept, basically, of gnosis that I speak of often as well, is when you reach gnosis, you reach the cup of fertility, where everything manifests for you. Because you know everything and you know what you have to do. So, with this goal, of course, we're always trying to see, how do we get things to work? How do we get things to work in people's lives? And just, the old philosophy is, oh, well, you want to make things quick and easy because people are too lazy to do things. And of course, and they're too busy in their lives. And of course, all of this stuff really is not that true. In terms of everybody has time that they want to, everybody takes time out. People say they can't meet you or do this. Well, they're doing something with somebody. And if you were a person of their interest, a possible sexual partner, boy, they'd make time for you, probably within the next 10 minutes, or whatever it is the benefits are. So people can make time if they want to, they just don't want to make time for you, then you got to stay away from those people. So everybody has a certain amount of time or can break things. It's just really whether they want to do it or not. It's a big nonsense. So that's really not the point here. We're not cutting down and telling people to do easy things that don't hold any power. What we're trying to do is have people perform at higher levels. And we haven't found that sustaining any particular altered state or energy of constantly putting energy into something has any value when it comes to this area. And that any of these kind of occult energies, whether it's healing, consciousness, or manifestation, holding that energy for long periods of time doesn't gain any better results. So if you think, well, I'm going to spend an hour at a ritual and I'm going to sit and meditate in front of it and do everything else. Well, once you reach a certain level of transfer of data, of information to a particular target, that's it. You can keep filling that glass up endlessly, but a glass will only hold a certain amount of liquid and then it pours off. And it doesn't matter how much more you keep trying to pour in there, it's filled. And secondly, you have to wait for a result from the target. Or using the glass analogy again, well, if you don't drink what's in the glass, what's the point of just keep having more and more of it? Drink what's in the glass, then fill it up again. And that's very similar to affecting at a target. Hit them with the energy. Let the energies manifest. And it takes time for these things to happen. Now, and I will clarify that as well. And this is probably the only time you'll ever hear really magic talked about in a professional manner from somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about, of how these energies work. Instead of, it comes from some hornhead freak or from this white light energy. I held a crystal and I saw the light. No. All that kind of nonsense, which is not doing anybody any value. Living in a delusional state thinking something is working for you when it really isn't has minor value except for the psychological value that produces for you. But that all wears off. That, quote, positive thinking nonsense, which hypes you up for short periods of time and assists manifestations, and ultimately leads you to a cliff, and or leads you to that top of that mountain, let's say, you reach this certain height because you're forcing it through these false belief systems that everything is wonderful and this makes things manifest, which isn't true at all. Just because you want something is not. Manifestation energies are not just positive thinking. Obviously, you want to be positive in life, but there's a difference between what these idiots teach. So they get you to the top of the mountain, and when you reach the top of the mountain, get ready for the fall. Woo! Splat! Because that's exactly what happens with all positive thinking, because you can't maintain that kind of ridiculous success that you supposedly produce through that. So you're for a big letdown. It's a very negative system and something to stay away from. But, people stay in these ridiculous states. You hear these kind of drugged out religious people who babble everything about Jesus all the time, or God, or whoever it is, or whatever their belief system, or the Hindus, or the Buddhas, or whatever the hell, all these people that are so concerned about their spiritual state that they seem to have to be addicted to it or have imbibed it to the point that they're drunk with it. So it isn't about making things easier so people can do them. It's about also making things in a much more effective system that just happens to be, like any real technology is, easy to do to an extent. But that's only to an extent. You have to get to these levels. So to cut to the chase here to some extent, the instructions that we have in most books, we're telling people to cut the time involved in doing those things, or to cut those things at least in half, or even down to a third of what you're doing them in the past. We started off using sigils and we thought, 30 seconds wasn't really a lot to look at a sigil, but if you think about that, it is, because if you have 10 sigils you look at for 30 seconds, that's 5 minutes, and 5 minutes is a fair amount of time, especially in this world. And does it add anything? Well, actually it hurts things, because you start thinking too much again, and the longer you think, the more the mind comes in, the further you get from being. And when you're not being, you're thinking about being, you're thinking about your goal, you're not becoming what it is. So you have to become what it is and stop thinking about it. And I know that may be a little bit difficult for people to understand, but I'll have another lecture that goes into that, which I found an amusing thing recently online in a TV show that explained it. But in more kind of new agey terms, but very interesting. But the point is that the more you concentrate on something, the more you allow this, because your mind is fighting to take back control of this and enslave you, fighting against the inner magical being, that when you allow this process to go on, you get a big fuddled bunch of crap that happens. And we're finding out that in long term doing rituals, that you actually go from a positive manner into a negative questioning manner, and actually you're reversing the effects of the matter. That's how bad it is to do things for long periods of time, because your brain comes in, your mind I should say, comes in and sabotages you. So not only is it good and easier and more effective to do things in short periods of time, it's a necessity to stop that constant brain, that mind, from coming in and sabotaging you. So we've gotten down to using sigils basically for a count of 1 second. And when we tell people, don't count, just feel it, be it. So you can get a feel that, a second is 1/1000. Now, what you want to do is keep turning the pages of the book basically in a rhythm. Vump, vump, vump. Don't be thinking, oh, how long is it? We've had people, even because the mind wants to do that, when we told people to do things for 10, 15, 5 seconds, they're virtually counting and timing. Now, what are you doing when you're counting and timing? And of course, that's a normal first step. Well, I want to make sure you do it right and get it for the right amount. That's what your mind tells you is important. Well, first of all, in occultism, ain't none of that stuff important. Because this is not a mind-based reality. This is a consciousness-based reality. So this has about being in your higher self, not your what you need to survive in this very evil world we live in. So when you do that, you are disconnecting yourself from the magical empowerment and hurting yourself. When you're counting and what is it, so you want to estimate, and you don't want to get your mind do that. So it becomes not a thinking process. It becomes almost a musical process. Va-vum, 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 va-vum. As you flick the pages and you let the energy, which is built up in those sigils, which is why it's so important to have these sigils, and why they have to be physical sigils, because they are accumulation machines, you could call these. These are actually real cosmic accumulators of very refined, filtered energy for that particular purpose and stream. So if it's for prosperity or for protection or for general manifesting or to connect into a particular protective symbol, a gargoyle, whatever it is that we have produced, it has accumulated those energies into that sigil that by the fact of viewing it, it is transferred into you. That's not from the eyes. They're not subliminal. A lot of people think, well, you got all sorts of stuff hidden in there. You look at it, like subliminal stuff. Well, there are some factors of that, but it's very, very tiny. They're not subliminal in nature. They're energetic in nature. They accumulate energy in terms of they accumulate, which is considered a particular, as using the nomenclature of the time that everybody is using now, they are scalar energy, which is basically an informational field. It's an information that is then transferred into you. But occult fields are not just information, they're energetic information fields, and that's why they tend to work so well. Information unto itself is not near as effective as an energetic, but a scalar field has no energy. It's strictly information. You push that information into some sort of consciousness, and that means the consciousness energizes and makes it work on its own. Well, we add energy into that, while a scalar field is just information. So that is how occult energies work and what they are. So occult energies, plain and simple, are informational fields that are energized. They can be energized by a spirit, they can be energized by the earth, they can be energized by psychic power, they can be energized through the many different things that we have, the crystals, the oils. These are all energetic fashions to take an informational field. You could say that that's pretty much a command. Whatever that information field, you want that information field to be reacted to and taken in by what you're doing, regardless of whether you're affecting yourself or others. So you're sending this information field, this programming, but that isn't enough. There has to be an energetic factor to it, and those are very critical, and that's the one big plus that occult sciences have over all these other sciences. Well, they may have all these informational fields, often called intrinsic data fields, particularly by certain radionic people, particularly the people who sell the SE5, and Don Paris, the person who's written a book on that, who is a person who sells that device. They talk about intrinsic data fields. And of course, all scalar waves are data field, no matter what it is. And we've all heard that term, but what is scalar waves? And I had to refine that to myself recently. What is that? So, and scalar waves being informational fields, being non-electromagnetic and non-energetic in the common or uncommon realm, are able to then go anywhere in time and space without a problem, because there's no energies with it that claim to stop those energies from manifesting. So it's just the information. That information is then acted upon wherever it is placed, is the theory behind that. And of course, magic is the same thing. It's always an informational field that you're sending to somebody, whether it's yourself or something else, with the energy with it. And then those energetic, those data information is you're telling yourself to open up and attract in all these, what we use as streams of energy, to surround yourself with whatever it is you need. So if you need love, you got to have that strong field around you. If you need money, you have that strong field around you. If you want to get rid of negativity and blockages, these are all part of what you send information to do, but that needs to be backed up with energies, not necessarily with energies that are making it happen, but with energies and energy fields that connect you to energy fields, to other energy fields or streams that then come in. The streams then make these changes with the help of the information, or what I'd like to say is empowered information, just like empowered visualization. I never find that the base stuff all works that way. You have to empower everything. So that's what an occult energy is. Oftentimes, you could call it scalar occultism. So, or scalar occult energy. So, I mean, that's what that whole field is about, to clarify it to the masses more, that what everybody is. Because you see this term all the time now, scalar, and, all these things you wear, they're all scalar, pendulums, this, whatever, pendants, machines. So, they're sending data. Now, how this data interacts with whatever they send it to, and if it actually is being sent to it, is a whole nother field. But basically, you're sending this information, and how does this work to your particular target? You're energizing it to get it to work. Now, you have to do this with passion, high states of excitement, not emotion. Emotion is not valuable in the process, because emotion shuts down your psychic thing. So if you're angry or even excited or even full of joy, this stops the projection or cult energy process, because you're mixing in your garbage with it. So you want to be in a high state of energetic energy, which is neutral, and then you want to add into that whatever it is. So that you are seeking. So you have to do this with a certain amount of passion. You have to feel good. You have to be at your peak energy. This is the time you want to do practices. And if you're doing practices all the time, it becomes way too rote. It becomes a very common practice. And when things become common, your mind steps in and cuts it off. Your mind starts to say, oh, I've done this 100 times, and Mom, I'm thinking about this now. So, it's always that fight between your inner magical being, which works from your higher self that makes everything happen, and the mind, who is rooted in the physical and constantly fighting. So it's a war that's going on. And the common mind is needed to live in the common screwed up society. So the more you live in your mind, the less you can manifest. The more you're part of society, the less power you have. Yet, we all have to be intermixed with society somewhat. People have families, they have to take care of things, you have to eat. Well, all these are the type of things that you want to eliminate as a Gnostic empowered person, but that's part of this life, and it's very hard to take those kind of giant steps. So, the mind serves a purpose, but man, is it out of control and negative. It's all the things that tells you to overeat, take drugs, it's constantly pushing you sexually and greed. It is a toxic sewer that you really have to constantly have on a very tight leash, or it will mess you up, dude. So, it's important that you understand that. And this stuff about the mind is so important, and the mind is what's it's not the mind. The mind is nothing more than a messed up, psychotic little freak that you have to beat with a stick on a leash to keep under control by your inner magical being who is working from that higher aspect. When your mind is telling you to constantly eat, screw, and kill, well, that's exactly what your mind tells you. So, When you start getting that little puppy involved, you're in big trouble. So the way you eliminate that is you never give the mind that much of a chance to come in and cause problems. That's why you do short, potent, enthusiastic, inner magical being directed rituals or projections, as an occult scientist says, for short periods of time and intermittently, like you're not doing it for long periods of time. Our basic rule now with everything is 3 days on, 3 days. If you do a ritual, you do it for 3 days with high intensity, at great times. You have good concentration, which means your inner magical being is in control 100% of that time, and then you stop. Because the fourth day, your mind's going to say, I did this, and they're going to start hitting the inner magical being, knocking them down, kicking them in the crotch. This is what happens when you do things too long. And it serves no purpose when you fall into that. And even if you were able to sustain these for more days, your particular target, which is either you or someone else, doesn't need any more of those commands. They don't need those informational fields to keep making money, to keep protecting themselves. It's working within you. It's not something you have to continually feed in terms of getting effects that way. You got to keep the process going, keep the ball rolling. But you don't have to kick the ball every second to keep it rolling. You kick it, it's rolling, and when it starts to stop, you go up and you kick it again. Why try and keep kicking the ball while it's still moving? There's no point to that, and that's what doing too much work does. And secondly, whomever you're working on, yourself or others, that when they keep getting bombarded by energies, when they're already doing what they can, start closing down to that energy. And I'm a strong believer that this is the same case with people that take everything. You know, if you drink a lot of coffee, what happens? Well, the coffee doesn't work anymore. And to a large extent, it even has a reverse effect. It tends to put people to sleep because the adrenal glands, which are stimulated in the areas that the caffeine affects, which is a very primitive stimulant, there's nothing wrong with it in small quantities. But if you want to get a little boost from coffee, you drink it every other day, not every day. Why? Because when you drink it every day, the body is tolerating it. It's the same thing with magical rituals. If you want to get results, you've got to let the energy go, let it work, and then step back. If you keep pressurizing and affecting somebody all the time, they build up a natural resistance to it. And I think this happens with supplements, and they say if you eat any food long enough and consistently that you're allergic to it because you've eaten so much of it. But if you do things consistently like that, I don't think you're right. So I think, and I've I've even moving this into my basic life of taking the different supplements and things that I take, is I take them intermittently. I no longer take a whole bunch of stuff every day. It's every other day. Some things I only take once a week. And I think, and from what I can tell in my research, is that the effects of doing this are much greater, and also taking things with a more conscious, putting those energies to work. But if the body feels the energy all the time in them, it naturally rejects it. So you get less effects from using certain supplements, especially if these supplements are supposed to work at a more higher level. There's always the basic stuff, but I don't think you need that either. Even if you're, while it's always a good idea to take some sort of multivitamin, and there's so many other things you should be taking, then there becomes cost factors, but the cost only really comes in when you're taking too much of it. If you're taking something twice a week, 100 tablets is going to last you a long time, even if that bottle is $30. And from my personal research, things work better when you take them intermittently instead of constantly. Because then you build this problem, this automatic blockage of so much coming at you, and you can just use so much. So it gets back to the analogy of the vitamin C. If you can only take 300 grams of vitamin C in at one time, and you take 1,000, all the rest of that is being pushed out. And if you keep doing that, I'm convinced that the body starts even shutting down the response to the absorption of vitamin C because it has too much of it all the time, and it's starting to naturally reject it because it has so much of it. And it's the same thing with magical energies. But as we all know, if you don't take vitamin C because the DNA was turned, the DNA that we make our own vitamin C was turned off in us by hostile forces to enslave us to the earth more, you will die. You will get all sorts of diseases. This has been a problem throughout the ages, and it's amusing because vitamin C ain't that easy to get. Of course, it's in a lot of things you don't think of as well, and in higher quantities than, in oranges, but there's a lot of it out there to some degree, but primates eat 10 times the amount of vitamin C than we do, but that's another issue. But all in all, things start to shut down. And this is very true when you're talking about occult energies where you're bombarding yourself all the time. Let's say you're looking to draw money to you. Bombarding. Your consciousness says, enough of this crap. I'm getting hit with it. And I think it has counter effects, and we're seeing this now more and more. Now, a little bit of consistent work, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and of course it's probably going to go into a couple of this, probably as part one right now, of the new manifesting policies. A little bit of doing that can be helpful. But as I said, if you keep bombarding, if you're going in and you become this boring process, becomes something that you've done all day, every day, and you're doing it on and on and on, and you may or may not be getting the kind of results that you like. It gets to the point where I'm doing so much of it, why aren't I getting so much more results from it? But it gets back to the vitamin C. You're only going to get a certain amount of results from things no matter how much you push it. And there's a time factor. Valley Magic has to go out and bring down the blockages that are around you, create this magnetic energy around you to draw these things in. And this has to work in the particular time frame that you're at. And it's going to come, things are going to come through the channels you have. And if these channels are maxed out, meaning as much is going to come there, and one of the things is very typical of someone who has a business or is in a particular situation, I mean, you can just pull so much through that particular channel. So what does that mean if that channel is, let's say, full, or it's blocked up now? Nothing more can come through there. Not because it's a blockage, but because that's it. Well, new channels have to be opened up, and it's going to take time. And this is the limitations we're all dealing with. And it doesn't matter whether you're high on the scale or low on the scale, if that's a even way of expressing things in terms of, let's say, you can make lots of money or little money. These channels have to come to you. It's just going to take time. So here we go again. It's about building these fields around you, keeping them strong, and as such, creating this magnetic energy to you for whatever it is you desire. And that field is not going to keep increasing and increasing. Once the energy field is there, once the data is worked on, it is at this level that's going to bring in. Now, well, how do you bring in things more and faster? I mean, this is very typical mind of particularly Westerners and particularly Americans. More is better. Well, it isn't. More generally doesn't be better at all. If you keep pushing these energies in, your body actually rejects it, and as I said, and you're getting into this negative thing that actually push money away from you. Enough's enough. So the whole idea is to find the right for you, and it will work in your life. The whole idea is you need time. What is happening here in the higher level of understanding this, past this base level that we've taught for years, is the gnosis process that is happening on, meaning you are now learning, the magic is teaching you how to open up channels so that things can come to you. And none of this stuff can happen overnight. I mean, I look back even in the last 3 or 4 years and how I've grown as an occultist and a grand master, and my understandings and what's coming to me and what I'm finding to figure all these things out to pass on to everybody else, past the already great level we had. But there is no such thing as stopping either. We are seeking the ultimate grail, the ultimate gnosis, and that is virtually Hollywood-like effects of magic. And then ultimately, those effects and empowerments grow into the fact where you then reach a high state of consciousness and ascend off this stinking rock. So, these refinements, these understandings, may be way beyond a lot of people's understanding in general. It's hard to really say with that, but we are not here to repeat the same old things all the time. It's time for everybody to grow and get it. And you will over time, just what I'm saying. Information and learning is just like doing a ritual. You can only take so much in at a certain time and understand it to a certain level. So taking someone who doesn't get it and giving them very high, powerful concepts doesn't work. That's what the inner order, the impeccable path, is all about. It's not about making sure that people are somehow screened but if you don't get things on the basic level, if you haven't understand the basic information, you haven't allowed that to mature. It's like a fine wine. We're pouring all these knowledge and gnosis into you, and it goes into your wooden barrel, and is now aging. And what happens with wines or fine whiskeys? What do you think happens? Well, a certain percentage of that disappears. This is one reason why certain things, particularly whiskeys and other things that are been aged, are so expensive, because you start off with a barrel and after 10 or 15 years, you've lost a third of it. Whatever the exact figure may be. So, you've lost all that. So, it's not only the fact of the rarity and the storage, it's you actually have less of the product. And this happens in the occult aspect as well. You start losing your lower self, the stupidity. This all goes away. And this takes time. There's no way to move this process ahead faster as a general rule. But that is changing too. There are technologies coming out where they can actually age things. But I don't know if this is going to apply so much to the understanding your consciousness, but it does to a degree, because as you get better and better technology, you understand and are able to achieve things faster and better, and hopefully you're catching up with that as well yourself in terms of you're just understanding better. So if you're going to teach people how to do very high concept things, they have to get the basics and be struggling and working with. They have to be in that barrel and aging to perfection so that they can understand the higher concepts you give. Giving very high spiritual technology and concepts to people who don't get it is a big waste of time. They then tend to say, well, this is all crap, because they don't understand it. So, of course, it's all crap to them. There's usually the reaction, or is that all there is type attitude to very profound, impeccable path training, which they just don't understand, because it's not a training that is necessarily physical in nature with techniques. It's a gnosis understanding of how to do things and how to evolve to these next level that involves your whole being. And you just don't want to share quality stuff with people that just don't get it, and that turns into a criticism and negativity towards the path that has absolutely nothing to do with the path except for the person who didn't get it. So you're only going to be able to understand and open up things in your life to them. So it doesn't matter how much energy there, it doesn't matter how much that you're glowing in, let's say, success or money drawing energies. Where is that going to draw it in from? It has to open up channels. There's this whole series of dominoes that have to drop and hit each other to create these things. And it's not going to happen in your life like that. You're going to be given the magic will go in and say, well, the gnosis is the fact that, you want to make more money, you want to bring prosperity for you, well, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to move, you may have to go to another state, you may have to get another job. Well, Is that going to happen in a week? Well, I'm just going to move somewhere. Well, you got to get an apartment. You got to set up yourself. You got to get it. All these things take time, and then you have to adjust to your new energies and your new environment, and your new job, and your new opportunities. I mean, it takes time, and that's just, there's no error. So pounding out more and more success energy when you're in a transitory situation, we find is counterproductive. So it's not about waging the battle in a consistent manner in terms of the day-to-day fight. It's more like dropping the atomic bomb in a war. Boom, one big giant, well, that's it. But that doesn't mean that it's it forever. It means it's it for that period of time. There it is done. You walk away from it. Of course, you're going to have to drop a lot more of those bombs in the future. And if it's fresh, if the intensity is high, you get better results. And targets get this, which has always been a factor in healing and in radionics in general. There's always been an interesting research that does pulse work. And, this is with a lot of different things. Does a pulsing work. And a pulsing is, when you send energy in a stop and start fashion. And this tends to work better with the body because the body itself, who automatically is going to repulse anything that comes at it, whether it's helpful or not, it's going to put up a blockage. And if you continue to send consistent energy to someone, they're going to put up a blockage. If you pulse it to them, they block. Oh, it's gone. They relax. Then all of a sudden they get hit by it again. Whoa, 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 I wasn't ready for that. Oh, the field of energy has gotten into the target, which of course is yourself as well, instead of that constant blocking, because they're not ready for it. So that's very, very important to understand. It's that pulsing, that 3-day on, 3-day off. The transfer of information is instantaneous. So we're getting to the end of part 1 here. We'll pick up in part 2.